your contributions today.
Thank you.
We've got one more item before lunch, folks, on the weather, response to the weather events. So I think we'll just have a quick couple of minute break while the people get themselves set up. So just a couple of minutes to stretch your legs and get a drink, and then we'll try and do that before lunch if that's all right with everyone. Thank you. Now, so we proceed to item 9, response to the 2023 weather events. And delivering for us today, we have Jane Hussain, Business Improvement and Support Manager at AT, Andrew Allen, Executive Manager, Service Delivery, our Chief Executive, Dean Kimpton, and Steve Mutton is back up from Waka Kotahi. But basically this item is there to provide an update on the internal reviews of the severe weather events of 2023. It was recently completed by AT and NZTA. Okay, who's leading this off then, Andrew?
I'll lead it off. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. And I do recognise that we're probably standing between you and a decent break for lunch after what's been a really busy morning. So we'll try and keep this brief and high level. You've done a great job, Chair, of introducing all of us at the table, so I won't repeat that. I'll talk very briefly about the background and the context for today. It's been well over a decade now since Auckland Transport and Waka Kotahi got together to establish the Auckland Transport Operations Centre. And the Auckland Transport Operations Centre is a partnership with Waka Kotahi and AT to monitor and manage in real time the one network, so both of our networks out there for customers. A key function that ATOC, Auckland Transport Operations Centre, performs is to really monitor and detect incidents or events that have a disruptive impact on how people travel and move around our transport network, and then to either respond or to support the response to remedy that impact or event on the network so that we can restore normal operating conditions as quickly as possible. Whenever ATOC do respond to incidents or events, they always follow on with either a debrief or a review as part of their continuous learning process to understand whether there are things that we can do better and or whether there are things that we did really well that we need to continue to focus on moving forward. And as you've highlighted, earlier this year we were subject to some really significant weather events, and as part of that continuous improvement process, we've gotten together jointly, so Waka Kotahi and ourselves, to do a couple of internal reviews, and I do stress internal reviews, to look at the processes and our actions and responses to those events, as I say, to understand what learnings we can take from that, both positive and work-ons. And to that end, I'll hand over to Jane. Jane's going to take you through a very high level and a quick brief overview of the findings from those reviews in terms of key themes.
Thanks, Andrew. So kia ora koutou. As Andrew's mentioned, that as part of the both organisations' culture of continuous improvement and alignment to the organisational values, joint internal reviews were undertaken for the purposes of identifying successes and opportunities for improvement. The focus was, and the scope rather, was that these were internal reviews, and the focus was on emergency management response actions. There are other programs within Auckland Transport and Waka Kotahi that focus on the recovery stages. These internal reviews were also independent of any external reports such as the Bush Review. So today we'll accept all of the, take all of the reports that we've provided as being read, and I'll just go through briefly through this presentation. So the insights from these reviews were consistent and provided us with 6 key themes of successes and approximately 9 key themes of improvement recommendations. I'll just move to the next slide. So through each of the emergency event, the scale and the severity tends to vary, and with it comes new learnings, and this has culminated in some successes for us, which are noted in brief in this slide there. So I'll just quickly go through some of these with examples. So in terms of time to respond, so with that, during the anniversary weekend flooding event, ATOC was the first to stand up an incident management team to respond to the emergency. Additionally, high levels of readiness was also there on the 9th of May flooding event, as ATOC operated quite closely with Met Service as well. In terms of other things, successes, so we had measures in place to work with our network contractors and public transport operators as well. So this included, for example, proactive monitoring of vulnerable areas on the network, such as Wairau, Karekare and Piha, on the 9th of May, and so our contractors were highly responsive to quickly and safely reopening the roads where needed. Customer demand on the public transport network was also supported by our PT operators during the off-peak hours in the same event. So moving on, while schools enacted early closures without much notice on the 9th of May, AT made a deliberate decision to prioritise additional bus resources to ensure safe journeys for Auckland tamariki. The next theme is around effectiveness of our operational relationship with Auckland Emergency Management, and this was also recognised by AEM. And lastly, the staff and the incident management teams were working with heightened level of response for a long period of time and demonstrated high levels of commitment. And as an example, the staff were in either readiness, planning or response mode approximately 39 out of the 49 days in early in the calendar year. So what you see there are the 9 themes of improvements. Now these were drawn from 24 detailed recommendations from the discrete debrief reviews, which are available in the detailed reports. We already have some initiatives in various stages of progress at the moment to address some of these recommendations. And what I'll do is just quickly go through these recommendations and provide some examples of what we mean by them. So firstly, first theme is around improving network resiliency. And this essentially is by proactively addressing vulnerable parts of the network, incorporating changes in our capital improvement plans and programs, as well as implementing, for example, weather-proof solutions in order to protect our vulnerable assets, such as traffic signals out on the network, and having planned detours. Another theme was around uplifting our people capability. So as examples, what's recommended are having minimum standard of training available, as well as desktop exercises of complex response scenarios in emergency situations. So this would have to be a broad membership for resiliency purposes, and also ensuring that we're working with our partner organisations to achieve that. Egress planning was another theme, particularly for emergency situations, and this would be achieved through plans for varied situations across the roading and the public transport. It would also include contributions to the AEM evacuation planning process, for example. Common operating picture. So what we mean by that is essentially developing a common operating picture that allows ATOC to efficiently and reliably identify the whole of network impacts and be able to communicate this through good technology solutions. So this would also allow information sharing with customers, AEM, some of our other stakeholders for decision making at pace. In terms of building strategic relationship with partners and key agencies, so that would help us to enhance customer communications, and would achieve this by ensuring that there is aligned messages between the key agencies, for example, as well as implementation of strategic communications functions within ATOC, with the view to, that they would advise on behalf of Auckland Transport, Waka Kotahi and ATOC on critical customer communication decisions. There are also improvements with Met service that's required. So this is around a common understanding by use of encouraging plain language to be used in debriefs and information. And this would help to easily digest information and be able for us to be able to potentially identify areas of impact from the weather warnings as well. A number of internal process enhancements are also recommended, which includes clear communication and control clear command and control systems during emergencies through alignment of emergency response plans, as well as governance across AT, Waka Kotahi and ATOC. So this would, for example, also include defining levels of service and resources for a one customer, a one network focused response effort. The 8th one there is around real-time information. So essentially it's about, again, a one transport network view in communicating with customers. So where there's faster, reliable, consistent and accurate real-time information. And this would include having robust interagency communications process and some standard communications plan, as well as accessibility and some consumable channels for communication with our customers. The last one there is around resiliency, many examples under there as well. This would include things like wellness tools for rostering and recuperation, safety roles focusing on the welfare of our staff, particularly those who are in impacted areas, as well as remote working capability and capability with templates and collateral to support the IMT process. So I'll just move on to next steps quickly. As I've already mentioned, that there have been several improvement initiatives already underway towards the recommendations. So in addition to that, an emergency management improvement program has been developed, which will further highlight solutions that that will address some of the recommendations that we've noted here. So the focus of the program, again, is on a one network and one customer approach, and this is to ensure that the customer is at the heart of what we do and that their experience is enhanced during the emergency response phase. So this program is also going to be monitored by ATOC's Joint Management Board, which has representation from AT as well as Waka Kotahi. Thank you. We'll take questions if there are any.
All right, thanks for that presentation. So open it up to questions. Councillor Lee.
Thank you very much for that. 9th of May, I vaguely remember of the severe flooding at that time, and Aucklanders being very nervous after the two preceding storm events. And what happened was, rather than a triumph of official leadership, was absolute chaos. Vehicles, buses, all caught up in a gridlock, services cancelled, the train network ground to a halt, except for, I think, Onehunga, which is normally the other way around. But all due to an official message to working Aucklanders to go home and stay home. And everyone did, all at the same time. So it would be good to acknowledge the learnings from that failure and speak about it bluntly and openly. And that's the only way you can learn from these things. 9th of May was by no means a triumph.
Well, I guess it's is there no response to Councillor Lee's?
Well, there's certainly a comment in there. I'm not sure there was a specific question, but look, we certainly acknowledge, and you'll see that. I don't think we're, thank you, Councillor, and through the Chair, I don't think we're trying to cover anything over and say anything was great. I think what we're trying to do is say that we've undertaken a review and we have a number of learnings coming out of those reviews. One of the key themes that we've identified here this morning is around customer comms and strategic relationships. So we are absolutely taking on board that there is more work to be done in terms of effectively communicating with our customers and the messages that we share with them, so that we don't end up with confusion, as you were alluding to, Councillor.
Oh, sorry, looking at the graphic with all the circles with tick, 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 called successes. I think we just need to be a bit more objective, that's all.
I'd just like to respond if I can. Auckland Transport didn't issue the go home, stay home instruction. We do have a view though, and that's what you see in these recommendations, and that is that we need to be joined up with Waka Kotahi and Auckland Emergency Management. A go home, stay home, and then don't go home, don't stay home, and doing that at a time of day when we just do not have a public transport service available did not work well. That is a key learning. We've all learned that. So I acknowledge it, Councillor Lee, and good practice might suggest that you're best left in place. So we've got that. It has been clearly observed. I've discussed a number of times with the team as well, and that is where the role of ATOC, Waka Kotahi and Auckland Emergency Management in serious events needs to be seriously joined up.
Thank you, Mr. Kimpton.
Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just noting this was an internal review, and maybe this is outside of the scope. Well, it is. and maybe this is outside your remit as well, I won't make any assumptions, but are you planning a wider review of what happened, and if so, would you be looking to, and I mention this because Marae played a critical role during these extreme weather events, and there's a whole lot that could be done around communications, having them ready and front-footing potentially these events. Of course, we don't know when they're going to come, but I guess it's two parts. Is there a wider review that's going to happen, and what role would you see Marae playing in the overall integration of your methodology?
Auckland Emergency Management is a lead agency. It's quite a clear delegation. Auckland Transport and ATOC has a specific role inside of that. So my encouragement would be, if we're to look at how the community helps respond to these large, high-impact community events, that is best led from Auckland Council and Auckland Emergency Management, and it brings all those parties together. And of course, we would be very interested in it because the role of schools, marae, churches, and other safe places is critical in the resilience of the community, not just the infrastructure. So I agree, but that's where the responsibility for that sort of further work would need to lie.
Kapai, thank you, and we have councillors here who heard that, so thank you. Thanks for that answer.
Yeah, good question. Councillor Henderson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I appreciate your work hugely, so thanks for that, and I also appreciate the work on reviews, which is very important for what is obviously going to be a problem for the city going forward in the future, which really sucks. My question is, when the storm hit and chaos hit, bus drivers were still driving around routes that had become unsafe and had become flooded out. So I'm wondering how we're beefing up our communications to contractors and therefore to bus drivers so that we can respond really quickly to those concerns when they hit.
Thank you, Councillor, through the Chair. What you'll notice here today is that we've put on the table the key themes that we've identified that need actions to be developed and solutions put in place. What you've just articulated is something we're well aware of. And we have picked up, it's part of the process improvements and having access to better real-time information so that we can get it out to those operators so that they're not flying blind, so to speak. So we do acknowledge that. I don't know exactly what the solution is here today. That's part of the program we are going to put together to respond.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Councillor Fury?
Thanks. I'm interested in the people capability and resilient staff aspects, and I wondered what conversations you'd had with the various workers involved on the day on the ground or in a bus or whatever about what they've observed and how we could do that better. Thanks. And whether you've talked to their unions. Thank you.
So again, the scope of these reviews were internal, so which means that the debriefs were completed with internal staff members who were part of the IMT, had memberships into IMT. It did include the liaison officers, for example, AEM, etc. But no, we haven't gone broader than that, simply because of it's beyond the scope that we were given.
Can I suggest that they might have some useful insights as the receivers of the information and the instructions? So that might be something to look at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hills?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the information. I remember at the time because I was standing at Key Street sending you guys photos of the long lines of people. I guess for me, and maybe it's not for here, but were you guys contacted before the emergency text went out? Because I feel like it felt like a bit of a stampede to downtown when I was there after the text came out. And what I had information was all the shore services were actually in flood, as well as the rail on the 9th of May. So the buses actually couldn't get there in time. So were you told that the emergency text was going to come out? But no?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Hills. I'm reluctant to answer it because I'm not exactly certain, but it is my understanding that when that emergency text went out, we weren't aware that it was going out. I wouldn't want to be quoted on that right here and now, but that is only my understanding. We can certainly come back to you and confirm exactly where the timing related to that.
Okay, thank you. I guess maybe a comment which you could also answer. I guess from my experience on the 27th of Jan and then kind of again on this time, I was trying to do comms without information, and if for future, if there was a way, and there's probably not under these circumstances, to get, even if we had a group of lines we were allowed to give out in these situations, because I was sort of just telling people on my social media, go back to your offices, because buses, I knew you couldn't move the peak forward. Everyone was gone back to the depots for their lunch breaks, and there's no way to get up when the motorways were flooded, or the exits back in time. So I guess I'm nervous, like on the 27th of Jan, I was sort of getting told off for putting out information, but if we're seeing things, what are we as elected members allowed to do, you know, when we see, I was contacting some of you, which probably may not have been helpful but at the time, but yeah, because it was chaos, but from on the ground you could see things you could maybe help some people avoid.
Yeah. Through the chair again, I think that's a really good observation, Councillor, and it is something that we have picked up and acknowledged. We do see councillors and local boards as being potential conduits of information into their communities, and part of the actions that we've identified is that we need to think about a way in which we can get key messages to individuals such as yourselves and others who need it in order to be able to communicate with their communities effectively and with the right messages. So it is very much one of our observations, and we will develop actions to ensure that moving forward we have solutions for that.
Thank you. And I just want to say, Chair, as soon as the rain stopped, the peak was moved forward 2 hours, and it was a 45-hour delay before that could happen, but the city cleared once the bus drivers could get back, but I don't know how they would have done that otherwise. So I just want to put it out there that in that 1 hour, it seemed pretty bad on the ground, but moving that peak forward somehow, I don't know how you did it, it cleared and everyone was pretty safe, but it was pretty chaotic. But I don't know how we learn from that in the moment, but thank you.
Just one concluding question from me, Andrew, and it really goes to that immediacy of information. Certainly, you know, during the first events in January, for instance, the go-to was often social media sites, a local Facebook page. Is that part of the monitoring regime? Because that was the most up-to-date and the most local, obviously for big chunks of Auckland.
Jane was about to answer that. We're probably going to say exactly the same thing. Yes, that is absolutely part of what we'll be monitoring going forward. I think there were a lot of institutions and agencies that learnt a lot from social media in real time. We were one of those. Auckland Transport was one of those. So that has got to be an essential part of your intelligence gathering in these real-time events as you learn.
Right, thanks very much. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Hill, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. I don't think there's any need for anyone to speak to. There's been some very good questions. Councillor Sayers?
Just a quick comment, and it's one of a bouquet that just as soon in my ward, the engagement that both agencies have had with the ratepayer and residents groups, and the listening to the concerns and putting in measures to improve the situations for future events has been very positive. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sayers. Certainly one of the hardest hit wards, so that's reassuring to hear. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Okay, carried. Thank you for your presentation. We'll just break for lunch now, ladies and gentlemen. So if we could be back at 1:30, that would be much appreciated, and we'll try and expedite the afternoon's business. Thank you.